Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Nedarim, pages 75 through 81, Ayin Hey through Pei Aleph. 75. Ha'omer li'ishto, if a person says to his wife, all the vows that you might make between now and the time that I come back from a certain place, a certain trip, they're all affirmed, meaning they're going to stand, not going to be nullified. Lo amar klum, he has said nothing. It doesn't mean they really are going to be affirmed. Harehen mufar, and if you were to say they're going to be nullified, Rabbi Lezer says, mufar, they are all nullified. Whereas the sages say, Eina mufar, no, they are not thereby nullified. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, so Eliezer, trying to justify his position, says the following. If a man can nullify those things which have already entered into the realm of prohibition, meaning they've already taken effect, shouldn't he also be able to nullify those things which have not yet taken effect? And therefore this method should work? Amrulo, they responded no. It says in the Torah, the man shall affirm or the man shall nullify. Et those nedarim which are in the realm of being able to be affirmed because they exist and he knows about them, can also potentially be nullified. However, if they cannot enter into the realm of being affirmed because either they didn't exist yet or they were not heard, they cannot be thereby be nullified. Ayin Vav 76. Hafar nedarim kol hayom. The nullification of vows. Nullification of vows can happen only till the end of the day. Meaning, if a man hears his wife's neder, he has until the end of that calendar date to get the job done. However, an alternative view, in the name of Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, you have 24 hours. If you heard it on 3:33 in the afternoon, you have till 3:33 the next day, as opposed to just sundown of that day. Ayin Zayin 77. Sava Rabbi Yosef Lameima. Rabbi Yosef thought that the following: Nishan Nedarim b'Shabbat, you can request release from a neder on the Sabbath, b'Yachid Mumcha, with one expert judge, b'Shlosh Hadyotos Lo, but not with a panel of three laymen. Mishum deMechazi Kadina, because if you use a panel of three laymen, it would look as though this is an actual courtroom setting, and courtroom settings are not kosher for Shabbat. Amar le Abaye, so Abaye said, no, it's not true. Kevan Desfir le'afila me'umad, since after all we can do this standing, afila bekrovim, or even with relatives, afila b'layla, or even at night, it doesn't look like a real court. So since the other details of courtroom procedure do not have to be followed when releasing from a vow, therefore it doesn't look like a true judgment in a court case, and thus it's possible on Shabbat to release from vows which are germane to Shabbat, even from a panel of three lay people. Ayin Chet 78. Moadei Hashem, the holidays of God, Srichin Kiddush Beitin, they require the sanctification of the month by a court. Meaning, the calendar which determines the Shlosh Regalim, Yamim Noraim, that requires human involvement. Shabbat Bereshit and Srichin Kiddush Beitin. However, the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath, does not require sanctification by a human court. Meaning, it's God's doing, we don't determine when Shabbos is, it just happens every 7 days, whether we like it or not. As opposed to the holidays, which are determined by our human-involved calendar reckonings. Moadei Hashem tzrichen mumcha, the calendar of the holidays of God require expert judges. And Pash Nedarim tzrichen mumcha, but the release from a vow does not require expert judges. Even a common lay people's court is sufficient to release people from their vows. And it's in fact what we do at Erev Rosh Hashanah every year in the synagogues. 3 people who just happen to be members in good standing of the synagogue will sit and be the impaneled Beit Din. Ayin Tet 77. Yodani Shreish Nedarim. If a man's wife made vows and he didn't annul them right away, he waited until some later time, and then he woke up and realized, something's afoot here. If he says, I knew there were vows from a while back, but I didn't know that I had the right to annul them, Yafer, he can annul them now, today. Yodeni Shish Mafir, and if he said, I know that I have a right to annul vows, but I didn't know this was a vow, meaning I was uncertain as to the halachic status of this statement, whether it rises to the level of neder, so then Rabbi Meir Omer Lo Yafer, Rabbi Meir says he can't annul it anymore, it's too late. Whereas the sages say, no, he can nullify it now. Since he didn't realize earlier that it was anything riding on it, he didn't know it was a neder. Pei 80. Nivul dechad yoma lo shmei nivul. being repulsive for one day is not considered being repulsive. So we're discussing now the question of if a woman makes a neder which prohibits her from bathing for a certain length of time, for just one day. So that's not a big deal. If a woman were to make a neder not bathing for an extended period of time, so that's something which is distressing for her. It's inu nefesh, and the husband has a right to annul such types of nedarim. However, what we're saying here is 1 day without a bath is no big deal. Therefore, husband shouldn't be in the business of annulling that kind of neder. Pei Aleph, 81. Why is it uncommon that scholars have sons who are also scholars? Now, let's point out, in fact, that it very often does happen, and you have legacies and dynasties of rabbis. But in Talmudic times, and even today in certain quarters, it happens that the rabbi's kids are not the biggest Talmidei Chachamim. The question is, why should that be true? The Gemara gives a whole bunch of reasons. One, Shlo Yom Torah Yerusha Hi Lahem, so that nobody should say the Torah is an inheritance for them, meaning God will arrange things such that the sons of scholars do not succeed in their Torah learning, because if they did succeed in the Torah learning, then people would look at this and say, that family, it's an inheritance for them. They get it easy. We're doomed. We're never going to be scholars. So the Almighty Himself intervenes in the process to prevent that outcome. That's one answer. Another answer, they shouldn't lord over the community, or they should be because they do lord over the community. That we don't want dynasties developing of sages, lest there be an antagonistic relationship between the community of scholars, midor lador, from generation to generation, and everybody else. Alternatively, because the scholars call the ignorant masses donkeys. They make fun of the undereducated, the non-scholarly. So here is a sort of an elitism, a chauvinism on the part of the learned class. Therefore, their punishment is their kids don't become scholars. And the last answer is, they don't bother to make a bracha over Torah learning before they start learning. We're obligated every day to make birkot HaTorah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, v'harevna, asher bachar banu, and if failure to do so by people who are always learning all the time, they neglect to make this bracha, their punishment is their kid will not rise to their level of scholarship. Everyone have a great week.